Hey everybody, it's Zeke and I'm back again. So we have a lot to talk about because we're going into a whole new section called the Age of Jackson. The Age of Jackson. That means Andrew Jackson. But first, let's go back a little bit and find out how he got to where he's going to be, and that is President of the United States. Yes, he will be the 7th President of the United States, but we're not there yet. First of all, let me tell you a little interesting story here. On the evening of July 3rd, 1826, we have two men that have been in the White House before, John Adams and Thomas Jefferson. Now, they live in totally different areas. John Adams is in Massachusetts. Jefferson is in Virginia at his home in Monticello. Both of them are sick. Both of them are dying right now. Okay? So, they were both fellow patriots, signers of the Declaration of Independence. They are going to die on the same day within 5 hours of each other. Now, isn't that a coincidence? But even more than that, it is 50 years to the day of the signing of the Declaration of Independence. It will be July 4th. Yes, it will be July 4th, 1826. So let me give you the particulars on this. Thomas Jefferson and John Adams were the last surviving members of the original American revolutionaries who stood up to the British, and they forged a new political system in this country. Became a whole new country, folks. The US of A. This is how we started. Now, they were they both believed in democratic ideas and the democracy and the way that we should live today. They both believed in that. They believed in life, liberty, and what? Pursuit of happiness. Are you pursuing happiness? I hope you're pursuing happiness because you should be. You should be. You shouldn't be living in doubt and fear. You can't be living in fear. You got to be living in righteousness. You got to be living in the goodness of what this country has to offer. So you do that for old Zeke, won't you? Now listen, on July 4th, 1826, at the age of 90 years old, John Adams is laying on his bed in Massachusetts. It's actually at his son's house. Okay, that's where he was. While the country was celebrating the independence of July 4th, that John Adams said at one day will be fireworks from one end of the country to the other. Guess what? He's right. He was right about that. His last words before he died, his last words, Thomas Jefferson still survives. In other words, he's the last one to survive. If that only was true, Mr. Adams, but it wasn't. Jefferson had died 5 hours earlier at the age of 83. He died 5 hours earlier. Now, isn't that remarkable? So these two great men who were such great friends, and actually when Adams was president, Thomas Jefferson was vice president, right? They got into an argument about a lot of things and the way they thought about opinions on things. Before you knew it, they weren't speaking anymore. Now, even though these men had disagreements, they didn't talk for a long time, a 10-year period. Once Mr. Adams' wife, Abigail, passed away, he ventured out and he wrote a letter to Thomas Jefferson. Jefferson's wife had already been gone. Martha had already been gone for quite some time. It broke the ice. Isn't there sometimes when you're fighting with your friend, you need to break the ice? You need to break that ice, folks. I don't care if it's your friend or if it's even a family member, you need to break the ice because time is short. Time is short. Look at all the years they wasted. All the years they wasted. But the good thing is they got back together again. They became friends, started talking about politics again, talking about this great country again. And when they died as friends. That's a good thing. That's a real good thing. Now, here's something else that's really interesting. Another president, the fifth president, James Monroe, also died on July 4th. No, not in 1826. in 1831. 1831. So we had three presidents that we know of so far that died on July 4th. Isn't that something? All right, we're going to go on. Some of these things we've already talked about, but we're going to kind of hit the highlights again. And it's all about the elections and when John Quincy Adams became the sixth president of the United States. So let's start with that first, can we? All right, first of all, once these great leaders have died, they need new leaders in this country. They need somebody else to lead this country. Washington's dead. Franklin's been dead. Jefferson now and Adams. A lot of interesting people that helped to form this country have passed away. Hey, they're old. You know, when you get old, things happen. That's why you are watching this right now, because you may be the next great leader of this country, and you need to know where it came from. So let old Zeke tell you a couple stories. Westerners, people that lived out in the West, they respected a man that can make his own way in this world. A self-made man. Most Westerners, they gave suffrage. So listen to this word, suffrage. It means to right to vote to all white men. What about the women? No. No. What about the Indians? No. What about the black man? No. Just white man. Now, why is that so different? Because before, only white men that own land could vote. Now, if you're just a white guy, you can vote. Not a woman, though, of any color. Well, I can't say I sees it that way, but it's just the way it was. It's just the way it was. I know it's not the best answer, but it's just the way it was at that time. All right, so when they gave suffrage to just these small group of people, which just the white men, um, there was more people voting. So by the 1830s, the number of qualified voters in the United States had skyrocketed compared to before when you had to own land. Now, while a large number of free white men lost the vote, free white men got the right to vote, I'm sorry, many free African American men lost it. You mean they had it? Some states did have it. So it wasn't always that way. So listen here. Most northern states had allowed black men to vote early in the 1800s. Early in 1800s. However, these states took the right away and restricted it during the 1820s and the 1830s. So at what point do they believe that you're not qualified to vote anymore? Just on your color? Come on now. That don't seem right. But that's what states did. You always have to watch what the government's doing out there. So some might think, well, I don't care about politics. I don't care about the government. Then don't complain about it. You have to start watching. You've got to start using this up here. God gave you this thing between them 2 ears. Start using it and start getting involved. Okay? So, other groups in the United States had no voice in politics. What do you think those groups of people were? Well, we're not counting children. You had to be old enough to vote anyway, so children's out. Women. We talked about that. Women had no right to vote. They had no choice to vote. They couldn't vote. Native Americans could not vote. Could not vote. Women or men. And of course, them that were slaves. If you was a slave, you were owned by somebody. You were property. You weren't allowed to vote because your vote could be manipulated if it was. Your master tell you to vote for this one or vote for that one, you better do it. We don't want manipulated votes. First of all, we best get rid of that slavery thing. But that's coming. That's going to take a while. It's going to take a while there. Now, in this whole time period, you remember what was happening. Remember we talked about Mexico having that their revolution, and we had some people down in Florida that had a revolution, and we had to go in there and straighten that up. I brought something here for you. I wanted to show it to you because I saw it back here. This is the flag of revolution in Florida in 1813. You see this here? It's called the Bonnie Blue flag. The Bonnie Blue flag. Now, if you take this and you put a couple red and white stripes on it, guess what? It becomes the flag of Texas, the Lone Star State, Texas. So Texas got a little rebellion in it. Oh, we haven't even touched that yet. But wait till we get to Texas. There's a lot of rebellion going on there, folks. Well, I want you to see that this is where it starts from, the Bonnie Blue flag. This is a flag of independence. And I guess there is some rebellion involved with that, isn't it? People want to be independent. They're going to have to rebel from whatever tyranny that they're under. Maybe this flag will make a comeback. What do you think? We'll stick with this one right here, right? Let's stick with this one right here. All right. Old Zeke getting a little parched. Brought me out some sarsaparilla today. Look at that. Ain't that a pretty sight? And I'll tell you what, it is hot out today. It's a little bit windy, but it is the right time for some sarsaparilla. Ooh, that's good. I'm going to come back to that. All right, let's get down to voting again. Now, with this whole idea of women's votes, there was special meetings, okay? Because women really, besides not voting, there was a lot of other rights they didn't have. They weren't allowed to own property in a lot of ways. There was just a lot of things that women weren't allowed to do. So you talk about people that were in slavery. Yes, we had African Americans in slavery, but a lot of women felt that they were being treated just like slaves, even by their own husbands. Even by their own husbands. They didn't have the same rights as men do. They didn't have the same rights. So, under political practices that they had at the time, a handful of party officials of the Democrat Party and now the new, National Republican Party, they would gather in private meetings, separately, of course, and they would nominate the people they wanted to run for office, especially President of the United States. These meetings were called a caucus. Okay, so understand that word. It was called a caucus. Leaders, because only party leaders could take place in nominating these leaders of the President of the United States, the caucuses, people choose to call them King Caucus. It was like the big time meeting. Critics said it limited democracy. Why can't I choose? Why can't they choose? Why can't you choose? People demanded an end to this King Caucus. Enough of these political meetings. Well, in the 1830s, party officials bowed to public pressure. Sometimes it helps to go out there and protest. Sometimes they need to hear your voice. They need to hear your voice out there. Don't just sit in the house and do nothing. You get out there and voice your opinion. They began to hold nominating conventions. That's what we have today, folks. Big nominating conventions. People from all over the place, they want to nominate a candidate. So at the nominating conventions, delegates from each state, and that's the way it should be, they cast their vote for their political candidate. Isn't that something? Isn't that something? So today we do that. We have a Democratic convention and we have a Republican convention. And if there's any other party running, they have their own convention too. So they can nominate through the states, through the delegates, they can nominate who they want to run for their party's leader. Now, there might be 5 or 6 Democrats running. There might be 5 or 6 Republicans running. They got to narrow them down to one on one. And that's how it's done. Does that sound a lot fairer than having a big King Caucus private meeting and having somebody else choose the delegates and you just get to choose? No. This way, we get to choose the delegates. We get to choose the nominee. And I like it a lot better that way because we get to voice our own opinions. And that's what we should always be able to do, is voice your opinions and you do it in a democratic way. You understand? Don't get belligerent about it. Don't go off the rails now. You do it in a democratic way where everything is fair. That's the way it should be done. All right, so the expansion of the vote and the death of these King Caucus type meetings created an air of excitement, and more people would come out to vote. More people like that idea. They wanted to be able to vote. As a result, voter turnout increased sharply in the presidential election of 1824. You remember who won that? You know who won? John Quincy Adams won. Yes, he did. So, in the presidential election of 1824, fewer than 27% of qualified voters took part. 27%. That's not very good. I think it's a long way from 100%, isn't it? But by 1840, now we're jumping way up there. We're not there yet, but we're jumping up anyway. Voter turnout was more than 80%. 80%. That's kind of like what we're getting now. I hope we get at least 80%. We should be getting 80%. We should be getting 100%. We had one election not too long ago. Only 51% turned out. Not good. Not good. If you don't vote, if you get a chance to vote and you're allowed to vote and you're over 18, you're 18 and over, woman or man, and you're registered to vote and you don't vote, don't complain. Don't complain. You had your right, you had your chance, you didn't do it. So Zeke's telling you, if you have a chance to vote and you get out there and vote, this November is going to be a big one, isn't it? Yes, it is. So you get out there and vote. Actually, every November there's somebody running for something, and you need to vote whenever it's open. All right? Don't stay in the house. Don't stay in the house. Now, in 1824, we had a couple candidates. I don't need to go over them all over again, do I? All right, I'll go over a little bit, but not too much. First of all, we had Henry Clay. Henry Clay is from Kentucky. Remember, from Kentucky? He's going to represent pretty much the people out in the West. Pretty much people out in the West. Um, he was a very good speaker. He was somebody that could charm anybody. Just had that way about him. Okay? Very quick-witted, very charming. Those traits helped him earn the respect, and he was the Speaker of the House. So you have to have some type of brain to do that, right? The other was John Quincy Adams. John Quincy Adams, a lot like his dad, but hopefully a lot like his mother. They felt that he was very cold and calculating, though. Very cold and calculating. Okay? Many people found him that he didn't have much of a personality. Well, if they didn't think he had a personality, what did they think about his dad? His dad didn't have much of a personality at all. His mom's the one that had the personality. Yes, she did. He was okay. He was okay. He got a personality, but he got a lot of votes from those people in the North that had big business going on. So there was a lot of money going on there, and he got their votes. Okay? We also had William Crawford. Like Clay, enjoyed national fame as a longtime member of Congress. People knew him best as President Monroe's Secretary of the Treasury. So he had the same job as Alexander Hamilton did under Washington. You want to understand that, okay? So, good guy, I guess. Good guy. Also then had Andrew Jackson. Andrew Jackson. Now, this is a character here, and this is what we were wanting to start off telling about. So this may end up being a two-parter right here, folks. There's enough about Andrew Jackson, I could fill 10 of these, but I can't. I can't right now. Maybe later on I'll go into just specifics. But right now I have to tell you the basics so we can get through this thing, right? Now, Andrew Jackson was the hero of the Battle of New Orleans. Remember? The War of 1812? He was fighting them British down there with his Tennessee sharpshooters. It was a good thing that he was there, and he won that battle. Andrew Jackson, before that battle, now a lot of people don't know this, he was chasing people called the Red Sticks. Red Sticks were Creek Indians. And the Creek Indians had massacred down around Mississippi area 500 people at Fort Mims. 500. I'm talking about men, women, children, old folks. Didn't matter who you were. They massacred them all. They killed them all, and they burnt the fort down. Jackson was sent down there with about 900 men to find them red sticks. Now, it took a long time because they're going through swamps. They're going through all kinds of a bad territory. But somebody joined them. His name was Davy Crockett. Did you ever hear Davy Crockett? They called him the king of the frontier. Davy Crockett. You know, old Zeke's related to Davy Crockett. Yes, I am. Yes, I am. I'm telling you the truth now. I'm related to Davy Crockett. Davy Crockett was a hunter, and he was good with that there rifle. And he was a good trapper, too. He tracked down them red sticks, and he found their camp in a day. He found their camp. Well, Jackson, they attacked. They killed over 100 of them. They killed them all, and they burnt people inside their homes. Zeke, why are you telling me all this? Because war is bad. War is bad, and vengeance is even worse. But he went on to finish the job. Yes, he did. And then he went down to the Battle of New Orleans. That's where he was. People looked at Jackson as a leader, as somebody that could take this country in a new direction. What, killing? No, not just killing. Protecting. Protecting us. You don't realize how people felt uneasy about living and going out west when you had killings going on and the Indian nation just trying to protect themselves. So who do we fault? I don't know. I'm figuring if somebody wants to take my property and take my life, I'm going to fight for it. Whether I'm an Indian, whether I'm American. I'm just glad I wasn't in part of that. I didn't want to be any part of that. And Davy Crockett didn't want to be no part of it neither. He tried to leave, and Jackson kept him there, him and his men. Yes, he did. He did. Eventually, he got a chance to leave. He didn't like that killing. He didn't like that at all. Especially not the way it was done that way. When you're fighting in a battle, it's different. But you don't massacre people like that on either side. On either side. So in that case, both parties were at fault. Yes, they were. So anyway, let's get on back to this now because Zeke goes off sometimes in a tangent here because I'm passionate about this stuff. But you need to know your history, where it's come from. What happens is this. In the election of 1824, you know that Crawford had to drop out because he was sick. Henry Clay just did not get enough votes, but it was between John Adams and Andrew Jackson. John Quincy Adams, I should say. Make sure you know that. Jackson won the popular vote, but not the electoral votes. Not the electoral votes. Clay helped to get John Quincy in office because he was swaying votes. He was getting people to sway their votes and go for Adams. Well, as soon as that was all done with, Henry Clay was appointed as Secretary of State. Uh-oh, red flag, red flag. Jackson called Clay the Judas of the West because, see, they were both Westerners. He said, "You're the Judas of the West." Was he? Maybe he was looking out for himself. It was a corrupt bargain, they said. They said it was a corrupt bargain. But really, was it a corrupt bargain? Nobody found any evidence. They did some investigating, too. They did some investigating. And nobody found any of that. Now, when these two here were campaigning, let me tell you how bad it's going to get. It got bad between them. But That was in 1824. Right now is 4 years later in 1828. Guess who's running for president now? John Quincy Adams, still the president, running for president again, second term. Yes, Andrew Jackson. Oh, yes, he didn't give up, folks. He did not give up. He's going to run for president again in 1828. So, Andrew Jackson has the support of the urban Eastern workers, farmers from the South, and people from all the Western states, where Adams has a lot of Northern industrialists supporting him. They verbally would attack each other. When they were giving speeches, they verbally attacked each other. Jackson labeled Adams as an aristocrat, somebody who's very, very rich, a member of the upper class. He also pointed, and he definitely was rich, and he was part of the upper class. Jackson also pointed to funds that Adams had spent on national projects like roads and canals. Hey, don't we need those? Yes, we do. We do need those things. So what's the beef, Jackson? We needed those things. He claimed that by supporting those projects, that Adams had shown favor to a powerful federal government. Jackson hoped to turn voters who wanted more states' rights than federal power ruling over them. Got a point there. Got a point. On the other hand, Adams came back and said this. He called Jackson a barbarian and a savage who could scarcely spell his own name. Ooh, that hurts. That hurts. Now, Jackson hadn't had much education. He could read, he could write, but he wasn't very well educated. Even though he had done some lawyering and he had done great things, he didn't learn it all in school, and I probably shouldn't tell you that, but he learned it on the job. Yes, he did. He was even a judge at one time. And when other people would not get people that were supposed to be convicted of a crime, and they would subject them to that, Jackson, as a judge, took the law in his own hands, and he would go and get these people and throw them in jail himself. Yes, he did. Yes, he did. He was involved in lots of duels. Even though you weren't supposed to duel, he was. One time he got shot right in the shoulder. They were going to cut his arm off. He said, "You're not taking my arm off." They said, "Well, you're going to die of gangrene." He said, "Then I will." But guess what? He did. He didn't die of gangrene. He still had his arm. Yes, he did. He kept it. I think it was this one over here. But the bullet stayed in there until the end of his life. He carried a bullet in his arm the rest of his life. Probably didn't help him along the way. Lead poison and all that, you know. So, let me finish this one part up, and then I'm going to have to do part two because we are way over time here, folks. So listen here. On election day, Jackson, he won by a landslide, 1828. 1828. He would become the seventh president of the United States. You understand that? His support came with people with the newly armed right to vote. That's why he got more voters in there. Upon learning of Jackson's victory, Massachusetts Senator Daniel Webster, he wrote this: "In my opinion, it is when he comes to office, he will bring a breeze with him. Which way it will blow, I cannot tell. My fear is stronger than my hope." They said, "We don't know what's going to happen when this man takes office." Wow, we're going to find out, but you got to come in next time. So I'm telling you right here, you be kind out there. You be kind to somebody. Be kind to everybody. And those people that you love, what do you say? Tell them that you love them, right? You come on back later, and we're going to give you part 2 of Andrew Jackson, the age of Jackson, when he becomes President of the United States.